to top it all off, my daughter finished a match later than what was expected, and I thought, my goodness, how am I going to get here? But I am here, and it's wonderful to be with all of you. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to those of you who are of our Muslim community and are not of our Muslim community. We know that Salam Radio purposely is there to build bridges with all communities, and it's an absolute pleasure to be back here once again with your very own Dr. Shabina Asad Qayyum. Now, I'm a local GP, as most of you know. I work within the city of Peterborough. I love working within the city of Peterborough because connecting with people is what really does set me off in terms of satisfaction, gratification. That's part of what you do when you're a clinician. So this, in my Salam Radio family, an extension of this family is this Body, Health and Mind show. And we are one of the oldest shows here on the radio. And it's a pleasure to be back here. Now, before I introduce my guest, I know that there's been quite a lot of worry today, especially within Peterborough and Cambridgeshire, about the coronavirus. If you are connected with me on Facebook, please do look and read at the Public Health England guidance that has been issued by Dr. Liz Robin, who is the Director for Public Health within Peterborough, and she has given some very good advice that's been updated by Public Health England on the coronavirus, what you need to do, what you need to think about. Every single bit of information is there. So please do read it. It's on my Facebook page. I've tagged many of you. Share it as well. Widely distribute the information. And the other thing I just like to say is that there is a lot of varying reports from the media. It is a very new virus. You will suffer from a flu-like illness with any virus, as you do with the coronavirus. And it's the frail and the vulnerable and the elderly that are particularly susceptible to complications, just as the swine flu was. There's no need at this stage to panic. I would urge you not to panic. There's a lot of reports coming out in the media, but because it is a very new virus, it has gained traction within the news, and a lot of countries have been affected just because we're not really sure about the vector or the spread of this particular virus. It's thought to be respiratory, sort of a droplet infection. We still can't establish or substantiate whether that is 100% the case or whether it's transferred through other methods. So please don't panic as yet. And just what I would say as a general GP to you is please ensure that if you do have to sneeze or cough, you do so within a tissue and then bin that tissue and then wash your hands immaculately. And after you wash your hands immaculately, the use of alcohol gel, especially when you visit the bathroom. So please do undertake those precautions. Now, I am going to introduce my wonderful, wonderful guest. And I know that she's wonderful because I have been engaged in conversation with this wonderful, very highly accredited guest in terms of her accolades. And her name is Professor Shahina Pardhan, and she qualified with a first-class honours in optometry from the University of Bradford in 1984, when she was also awarded the Yorkshire Optical Society's Best Student Prize. In 1986, having been awarded a research studentship from the British College of Optometrists and a further scholarship from the Committee of Vice-Chancellors of the United Kingdom as a foreign student of outstanding merit, she commenced her PhD and was awarded a doctorate in 1989 from the University of Bradford. She is currently the Director of Vision and Eye Research Institute. Good evening, Professor Shahina Pardhan.
Good evening.
What a wonderful introduction. I think you must be the most highly accredited or decorated professional that I've had on the Salam Radio show.
It's very kind.
And it's wonderful having a woman on board as well. So very heartening. And it's an absolute privilege to host you this evening. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. It's a great privilege to be here.
Thank you. Now, Salam Radio likes to connect with as many people as it possibly can. The Body, Health and Mind show is one of the most popular shows with connecting to people. We have a lot of people that come and tune into the show, not just from here, but from abroad as well. And it's great because our topic today of discussion is about diabetic retinopathy. Really. And I've got some questions that I'd like to ask you, if that's okay. So what made you interested in diabetes? And why are you particularly interested in diabetes and diabetic retinopathy, Professor Shahina?
Thank you. So I'm interested in this for a number of reasons. Diabetic retinopathy is the leading cause of blindness and one that is largely preventable. So
Okay.
as an eye care professional, I am very passionate and committed to reducing the risk of blindness generally.
Sure.
Now, my interest in diabetic retinopathy specifically stems from one very sad incident
Okay.
when I met a very sweet young lady called Rena, who had sadly lost her vision due to diabetes. She was obviously heartbroken, and she told me she never knew that diabetes could lead to blindness, and she didn't know what she could have done to prevent that happening. She was devastated in that I was devastated in that she wouldn't be able to see her daughter getting married or ever see her grandchildren. And that sort of prompted me to, follow this line of work.
That's really a heartening
Mm,
account, and it's so it's I think it's quite coincidental that you mentioned that, because I knew of somebody personally in London who was a very good friend of mine from the
mm,
Asian community, and she said that if there's anything that really hurt her in her life, it was the fact that her mother couldn't see when she was a bride, and
yeah.
because she was blinded by diabetic retinopathy. And that really pulled at my heartstrings. And it's something like 14 years ago that she told me this, and it remains with me to this day, Professor. So it really is one of those things that, if not understood by our populations and the implications of diabetic retinopathy, it really can have quite adverse consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We
So
try to prevent that, don't we?
yes, we do. We do. And that's one of the reasons why, what leads on to my next question is, let's have a talk about diabetes first. So, what is diabetes? What would you like to tell our listeners about it?
Okay, so diabetes is a serious condition in which, our blood glucose levels are just too high. Now, blood glucose comes from the food that we eat. So, and for the body to use this food, it needs insulin, which is produced by our pancreas. And it is this insulin that regulates how the body uses and stores glucose and fat. Now, insulin will therefore allow glucose to get into your cells so that it can be used up as energy. But if our pancreas does not produce any insulin at all, then that is called type 1 diabetes. If there is insulin, but it does not meet the demand that we create by the food we eat, then type 2 diabetes results generally.
Right. So that's put in a very easy way for our listeners to listen to. And obviously, diabetic retinopathy would it affect both diabetes type patients, or just the...
Both.
Okay,
But
both of
it's
them.
very much linked to control, and I'd like to talk about that later. But yes, it will affect both types.
Yeah, okay. And how would an individual recognize the symptoms of diabetes?
So it is really quite important to recognize the symptoms of diabetes. So this will include increased thirst, frequent urination, feeling very tired, feeling hungry, blurred vision that comes and goes, becomes clear, isn't clear. And then if cuts and wounds don't heal, for example, the slow healing of cuts and wounds would all sort of be suggestive of symptoms of diabetes.
Okay, that's wonderful. And obviously, there's the specifics of type 1 diabetes where people feel quite thirsty and lethargic, children earlier on, isn't it? That are quite vague symptoms, but it's important. I always say to a lot of my general practitioner colleagues to test for diabetes, because often you will have a presentation of a child who is very lethargic and very tired. And just doing a simple glucose test can sometimes point out that there's a diagnosis of diabetes.
Exactly.
And when
Yeah.
you talk about people in terms of its sort of occurrence as well, prevalence, how many people does it affect in the world and in the UK?
So diabetes affects around 460 million people worldwide.
Wow.
And we know that the prevalence of diabetes has increased over the last 30 years. But more importantly, it is set to increase even more in the next 30 years. And that's across the board. Now, in the UK, there are about 4.7 million people who've been diagnosed with diabetes.
Wow.
Someone is diagnosed with diabetes every 2 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, so that means 1 in every 15 people in the UK have diabetes.
Okay.
But also, it is estimated that around 1 million people in the UK have not been diagnosed yet.
Okay. Okay.
And the majority of diabetic patients have type 2 diabetes, and that's largely linked to obesity and sedentary lifestyles.
Yes, and that's something that we always try to push out there. In fact, there are so many public health projects on this issue that try to promote healthy living and well-being in individuals. And I think that with the advent of things like technology and the internet and cars and aids for mobility, we really are more and more going into or plunging into a sedentary type of lifestyle, which obviously does impact on our health as well.
Yeah, which is why your program is so important.
Yes, it is. And which is why professionals like you coming on the program is even more important, because we can get the message out there even more effectively. So if you have just tuned in, this is the Body, Health and Mind Show on Salam Radio 106.2 FM. This is Dr. Shabina Asad Qayyum, your local presenter for the Body, Health and Mind Show, and I am hosting Professor Shahina Pardhan. And I'd love you to contribute by texting and WhatsApping us on 07745278978, or you could ring us on your studio telephone number on 01733602133. Are you affected by diabetes? Are your eyes affected by diabetes? Do you have poor control? Would you like to share your story of a deterioration in eyesight? We would love to hear your comments. And as you know, the show is also aired on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, it's on Twitter, it's on Instagram as well, anywhere. And we've also got the small Salam Radio app. So please feel free to talk to us and ask us any questions that you wish to. Now, moving on, Professor, we have why is diabetes such an important issue for our communities in particular?
So South Asians are more at risk of type 2 diabetes. And in the UK, the risk of diabetes is around 5 to 6 times higher in our community.
Right.
So 20% of all diabetic patients in the UK are South Asians.
Okay.
So quite a large number. And the risk of diabetes increases if your family history of diabetes. So if you have a family member who has diabetes, or if you have symptoms of diabetes and you are of South Asian origin, it is really important to get a diabetic check done. It is so much better to catch it early.
Yeah.
And, you know, South Asians, it's been shown that they're diagnosed with diabetes at a much younger age. Now, there was a really good study, which was the United Kingdom Asian Diabetes Study. And that showed that we have an early onset of diabetes with longer duration and also with a lower body mass index.
Wow.
Yeah, and, you know, there's a really good professor called Professor Hani from University of Birmingham, who also reported that we are at an increased risk of cardiovascular problems such as high blood pressure and heart attacks. And it has also been shown that the survival rates in our younger patients is also significantly lower. So it is such an important issue for our community.
Yes, and it's very interesting actually that you pointed out that people with a lower body mass index in our populations are still at risk of diabetes, even though up until now I always thought that being overweight would predispose you to the metabolic syndrome, which could ineffectively become diabetes. So
Exactly.
That's a really interesting point. So someone as skinny as myself is still at risk of diabetes, and I need to make sure that I take precautions adequately.
Yeah, we all are. We all are. Yeah.
So with regards to that, in South Asians, why do they show such a high risk of diabetes? What's the reason?
So there's research that suggests that we actually have inherited this risk to an extent in the way we store and burn our fat. And it's also possible that we are genetically disposed to this and a lower sensitivity to insulin. However, research also, without a shadow of doubt, reports that the risk of us getting diabetes and its complications is made so much higher by our own lifestyles. So this includes high-calorie diets, obesity, lack of exercise. All these play a really big part. And, my research also showed that we had sort of lower knowledge and awareness sometimes of why good control was important and what we actually need to do to maintain good control, especially in our older patients.
Yes, and that's why there are a lot of projects that are obviously on behalf of the British Islamic Medical Association just before Ramadan as well, to educate the South Asian Muslim community in particular about how effective control of their diabetes could help them. Now, I think you recently gave a talk, didn't you, at the GLADCA, is that right?
Yes, I did. In fact, we did a workshop there where we talked about diabetes. I worked with two wonderful ladies, Dr. Hina Vali Haq and Asma Sajid. And we had a really good turnout, and we talked about diabetes, the importance of diabetes. We talked about the changes with of retinal problems in the eyes. And also a really good talk on how to adapt your South Asian diet for diabetes. And it went really well.
That is brilliant. Well, if we do have time at the end, diet is the main hurdle, I think, for many of our South Asian diaspora is, well, how do we actually change? What do we actually eat? What could we cook? We're a nation, I would say, when it comes to South Asian individuals, that absolutely we love our food. Culture is centered around it as well.
Yes, but there's no reason not to enjoy it as long as we sort of do it in moderation.
That's brilliant. Yes, and I think that that's wonderful that we have you so that we can talk about that as well in a bit of detail afterwards. So now, uncontrolled diabetes, could we talk a little bit about the main complications of uncontrolled diabetes?
Sure, yeah. So there are some serious complications of uncontrolled diabetes, and that includes kidney failure, it includes heart failure, blindness, which is where I come from. And we could also lose sensation in our feet and in our hands, and this may lead to problems such as feet amputation, so we might be losing our feet too. And you know, in the UK, we spend £1.5 million an hour on diabetes, mostly on treating the complications of diabetes.
Wow. It's staggering, actually, that amount and the amount that we put in. And a lot of it sometimes is public health educational base as well, for prevention, which is why we're so blessed to be in a country where we have an asset such as the NHS that provides it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, we all have a part to play in that, in trying to reduce this.
Yes, we do. We absolutely do. And I think that the first responsibility coming from that particular demographic is unto ourselves, whereby we educate ourselves, we instill that particular lifestyle, and thereafter our children become accustomed to that type of a lifestyle.
Exactly.
And then a trend develops and it just becomes normal practice, doesn't it? So,
yes.
Well, thank you for that aspect, Professor. Now, let's go on to diabetic eye disease. Talking about our main topic, diabetic retinopathy. What is it?
Okay, so one of the major complications of uncontrolled diabetes is diabetic retinopathy. Now, diabetic patients are 25 times more likely to go blind compared to the general population.
Right.
And diabetes can lead to very serious problems in what we call the retina, which is one of the most important parts of the eye. Retina has many blood vessels, and diabetes can damage these blood vessels and also damage the nerves within the eye. So even when patients are seeing well, there may be some changes in these blood vessels. These may leak, and they will then lead to loss of vision. But the important fact is that blindness in diabetic patients is largely preventable as long as it's detected and treated on time. So these changes in the eye can be picked up by retinal photography, and this is offered to everyone who has diabetes in the UK. That's why it is such a wonderful thing for us to have NHS mentioned. However, in Peterborough, the rate of sight-threatening retinopathy is very high compared to parts of the UK, and that's what we need to do to try to redress.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's so important that you've actually illustrated, in a way, you've told a little bit about the structure of the eye, the anatomy of the eye, and how the retina works, why it's so important, the fact that it's got little blood vessels, and it's those little blood vessels that are at risk when somebody has uncontrolled diabetes. And you've only got one pair of retina, haven't you?
Indeed, indeed. And once you've had it, and if it leaks and you've lost vision, you can't go back. So you can prevent it, but it's not reversible once the damage is being done.
Which is why it's so important to talk in. Well, we've got quite a few. We've got another 4 to 5 minutes to talk a little bit about it. But the next question I guess I'd like to ask you is, what does your research show around sight-threatening retinopathy in South Asians?
So I started my research in Bradford. There is a large South Asian community.
Radistan, yes, absolutely.
Radistan, you get the best food there too.
Yeah.
And what we found was that South Asians have very high levels of sight-threatening diabetic eye disease. And we found that occurs much earlier in the duration of diabetes and also at a much younger age. And in fact, we showed that sight-threatening retinopathy was at the same level as that of Caucasians. But our South Asian patients were either 12 and a half years younger, or they had diabetes for 12 and a half years less duration.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So what type of message does that then give to our populations?
So what we need to do is try to prevent this diabetic blindness, and that is preventable.
And what do we do to prevent that diabetic blindness? That would be my next question, really, which is the hot topic.
Yeah, so there are two main ways. One is to have a complete control of diabetes, not only just of blood sugars, but also of blood pressure and blood cholesterol. The other is to get your eyes checked regularly for diabetic changes. Now, diabetic retinopathy screening is vital. Timely detection will reduce the risk of blindness by 60 to 90%.
Wow.
Now, like you said, we're very lucky in the UK that we have the screening program. Not everyone in the country, in the world, has access to such good healthcare. But it is important to know that this test is actually different from the eye test that's carried out for spectacles. So even if you're seeing well, and even if you've had a recent eye test at an optometrist for glasses, when the appointment for retinal photograph arrives, please attend it. So, I have patients who tell me things like, I don't think diabetes can lead to blindness. It's a sugar problem. What does that got to do with my eyes? Or some would say, I did not go for a diabetic eye check. I can see well. I have had patients who say, I don't want to go, as they will tell me that I need more glasses. This retinal screening test is very important. It is free, and you will not be given any more glasses from that appointment. It is also really important to have it done every year.
Yeah.
And then there are other factors that influence diabetic eye disease as well, such as the level of vitamin D, sedentary behavior, sitting for a long time will change your control. It will increase the risk of your retinopathy. Obviously, factors such as control of diabetes, diet are important. It's also been shown that if the control of diabetes is good at an early stage of diabetes, when it's onset and it's diagnosed, and then it's sustained, it will actually delay the onset of retinopathy. So early control of diabetes is really very important.
It is, and you've put forward so many relevant points as well, with justification and backup. Now, we are probably 60 seconds away now from approaching a break. There'll be a 4-minute break, after which we will come back and we'll talk about the other aspects of diabetic retinopathy. This has been so interesting. And in fact, we have quite a few people who have joined. Thank you very much for joining the show and watching us. We have 2 questions that have come up. I really like to say thank you to Munir Ahmed, who is a regular watcher of my show, I must say. Thank you so much. It's so heartening. All the way up in the north, who's watching us. So his questions very much relate to the diabetes. But now we've got 30 seconds to the break, and hopefully when we come back we'll talk a little bit, we'll ask the questions first of all, Professor, and then we will go to talk a little bit about the importance of attending appointments for diabetic retinopathy and all of your other wonderful key messages. So hopefully we can get you after the break, where we talk a little bit more about diabetic retinopathy with Dr. Shabina Asad-Kiyum and Professor Shahina Pardhan. Come back after the break.
You're listening to Salam Radio, and it's now time for Isha Azan. This Azan is sponsored by UK Islamic Mission, serving humanity since 1962.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا
الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم بك نحيا وبك نموت وإليك المصير. رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله.
This Azan is sponsored by UK Islamic Mission, serving humanity since 1962.
You're listening to Peterborough's community radio, Salam Radio, 106.2 FM.
Assalamu alaikum, greetings, good evening, welcome back to this wonderful Body Health and Mind Show. And I say this is a wonderful Body Health and Mind Show this week because of the wonderful guest that we have. We have Professor Shahina Pardhan, who is the Director of Vision and Eye Research the Eye Research Institute, which is the Faculty of Health Education, Medicine and Social Care. She's located in Cambridge. Welcome back, Professor Shahina, with such wise words of advice. And we've had some comments, and I'll first of all take you to Sister Asma Sajid, who you mentioned, who has said, great experience working with Professor Shahina to create awareness at large. So we have that heartening comment that's come forward. Thank you very much, Sister Asma, for watching us tonight. And we also have Brother Munir Ahmed, who has said, Salam Shabina and our guest professor. Such an important show to know about on the body, health and mind. Wish you could take this show to mainstream TV, as I think it's so important. I've got a question. Is diabetes reversible with diet, exercise, medication and everything else? Is it possible that the diabetes condition could end?
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, as long as the diabetes is not type 1 diabetes. So if the pancreas is not producing any insulin, then obviously that is so difficult. But if your diabetes is due to lifestyle and obesity, then there is research, and quite current research, that it is possible, absolutely possible, to reverse it and maintain that reversal.
Okay. I hope that's answered your question, Brother Munir. He's asked a second question, which is a bit later on. It's another question about diabetes. Can type 2 diabetes lead on to type 1? I think that's actually the other way around. Type 1 can lead to type 2. And which type is the worst type? Or both types? Are they as bad as each other?
They are. It's just that one is more reversible. One is one that you can maintain the actual good control. But if your insulin isn't being produced by the pancreas, then you do tend to rely on that insulin, which then makes it more health for health and treatment to be used for that. But for type 2 diabetes, that is also a very serious, important condition, but it is something that we can actually look after as well as try to reverse.
You're absolutely spot on, Professor, because, Brother Munir, both origins of diabetes are different, you see. It's when, with type 2, as the Professor rightly said in the beginning, the pancreas becomes insensitive to insulin that helps control your sugar levels, whereas with type 1, your pancreas stops producing your insulin. So that is why it's more of a permanent feature. However, with type 2 diabetes, we can reverse, the effects of what diabetes has on the body, whereas with type 1, it's more of an intensivized approach because those patients are very much on insulin at the point of diagnosis. So the professor's absolutely right and spot on in her diagnosis. So I hope that that's answered some of your questions. Now, Professor Shahina, before the break, you told us in a very articulate manner that how we can prevent diabetic blindness. My next question, I guess, is centered around when you mentioned that it's important to have good control of diabetes in order to reduce the risk of blindness. So what do patients need to know about it?
So we should know, like we've just mentioned, that diabetes is a serious disease, and that's both type 1 and type 2.
Yeah.
And I know that diabetes is common in our communities. So what happens is the importance of how serious it is does become diminished because a lot of our own family and a lot of our own friends have it as well. So, I have patients who tell me, oh, my friends have diabetes, so it's normal to have diabetes. No, it isn't. Or, sometimes friends sitting together may ask, are you on insulin yet? So it is really quite important to treat it as an important and serious disease, but also bear in mind that it is the one that we can help manage ourselves.
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Please complete.
Even when it is type 1 diabetes, because that does require insulin, but it is still manageable by us.
Yes, absolutely. And very, very sensibly put forward. Now, you've stated about the fact that we have these yearly checks. With regards to diabetic appointments, is it important that people or patients attend their diabetic appointments, and why?
Okay. Yes, it's vital that all diabetic appointments with the doctor or nurse are kept, even if you're feeling well within yourself. It's really, really important to keep these appointments, because if there are any diabetic complications, and they will arise if it's not controlled, it's better to catch them early.
Mm.
Now, I know this can be difficult for some of us. In our research, some people reported difficulty in juggling their working schedules or keeping these doctor's appointments, either for themselves or for their older family members. Please, can I urge you to work this out and attend these appointments? And also, don't try to change the treatment that you've been given by the GP before consulting them. Always make sure you take your medication or your insulin as prescribed. If you're not well or have any side effects, please talk to your doctor before stopping your medicine. And we found in our research that people tend to do that. So I really want to highlight that.
Okay, but that's brilliant. And is it only then the doctor's responsibility? I sort of know the answer to it, but I'd really like you to communicate it to our listeners. Is it only the doctor's responsibility to care for a patient's diabetes?
No, and you know the answer to that.
Yeah.
It's not just the doctor's responsibility. Really, it is very, very important that we actually own its management, and we try to control it as much as we can and look after it. And, this is not just about blood sugar, but also blood pressure and cholesterol. And I do appreciate that this can be difficult sometimes, but this is where family, friends, community may come in to help as well.
Yeah, and I think that that's so important, because it is the family unit, especially around our communities where the female is the pivotal body within that household, who is responsible for cooking, is responsible for feeding the family. So obviously that education also needs to be imparted to her. And it's very, I would say it's quite heartwarming that you're giving this advice, because I enjoy a very friendly relationship and a very comfortable relationship from a professional perspective with my patients. So when their HbA1c levels come and I see that they're a bit more increased from last time, I pick the phone up and I say, what are you doing? Come on, how are we going to actually sort this out? And I can only help you if you help yourself. And I think you're absolutely right that message does need to get out there.
Yeah, because it is something that we really need to own its management.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Now, can you talk to us? This is something that I've tried to find websites about, and Ramadan is coming up, so I know that I'm going to have to do a show on diabetes anyway. But can you talk to us about a healthy diet?
I can try. Okay. So, it is really important that we maintain a healthy diet. And what we found in our research was that some people found that, maintaining a healthy diet was difficult. So, some patients, although were keen to adopt a better diet, they weren't sure how to do it. For example, they knew that white rice was not always good for them, but then they didn't know what to eat instead. I think, things like cauliflower rice is a good substitute, as are plenty of salads.
Okay.
Vegetables are good. The other thing was some people actually talked about the fact that they weren't aware of the nutrient content of our Asian food. So, what should we eat? What should we not eat? Now, this information is available in various places like Diabetes UK. In fact, I looked at that and it is there. And there are instructions, and there's quite a lot of information on Diabetes UK about diet during Ramadan. So it might be worthwhile looking at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing, which I've just had a question pop through on my phone saying brown rice or white rice. Cauliflower rice I've never heard of, they've said, but now you have. So
I have. And cauliflower rice, in fact, we've started eating sweet cabbage as rice. Finely chopped sweet cabbage is really good.
Wow.
And it fills you up. Cauliflower rice, you just, shred your cauliflower and just blanch it a little bit. And that's quite good too.
Wow.
But again, green carbohydrates rather than the white carbohydrates are so good. And there are other things. So slow releasing sugars and food that release sugars slowly are better than, chocolate, ice cream, gulab jamu, all that stuff. Mithai, not so good.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my goodness, I do love my gulab jamun. Sometimes it's just just thinking about it. And actually, on my way out from the studio, there is a sweet shop on the way, but I daren't go there now. Just thinking about it, but
not every day.
Oh yes, absolutely. Now,
sorry, I just want to also point out a few things. In most Asian families, it's the women who cook. So it's really important that women are aware of the importance of good diet. And I know, like I mentioned, we've been brought up with white rice and white bread, and we all like mithai, we all like gulab jamu with high sugar and fat content. But these are foods that we should try to avoid, because if we carried on, we would really be inviting the complications of diabetes and even blindness into ourselves. So, trying to reduce fat intake, reduce salt, reduce sugar, increase your vegetables, increase your salad. And more importantly, Asma will tell you that you must try to reduce the amount of food we eat. So watch how much we eat. Try to reduce your portion sizes. Try drinking water before you start a meal. It takes around 20 minutes for our brain to register that our stomach is full. But if we carry on eating in those 20 minutes, then that's just extra food. So eat slowly and try not to eat whilst watching TV.
Because that can also be a vice, can't it?
Indeed, because we don't know how much we eat then, because our minds are somewhere else.
Yeah, I find this really, and it's so funny, whenever I have any professional that comes on board that speaks about the food aspect, I have this permanent smile on my face because it reminds me so much of our dinner table at home. And I don't like sitting at the dinner table for more than 10 minutes. I eat, I like to have a piece of fruit, and then I get up. Whereas my husband, who is listening to this show, will make a whole ritual ceremony about the dinner table, and he will eat, which is good. He enjoys his food, which is brilliant. I would never want to take that aspect away from him. But invariably, when it's drawn back to our love of food as an Asian population, we can see what it's going to do to us. So it's better that people eat small portions, eat quickly, have your piece of fruit or whatever it is, and get up from or your salad, and then get up from the table.
Yes, but make sure that you also, you have plenty of salads, you have plenty of vegetables. And, the other important point I really want to make before I forget is that we need to address the question of what do we do when we're invited out for dinner. Now, some people reported to us that they weren't comfortable in letting their hosts down by not eating what is presented to them.
Yes.
And I think it is perfectly okay to tell your hosts beforehand that the doctor has advised you to eat a healthy diet. So please, can you go easy on the butter and the salt?
Yeah.
There's really no shame in it, and I'm sure they'll understand, and you will preserve your eyes.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to be out and about in people's houses. So if you choose to feed me, no more samosas, please. I've had far too many samosas this week, along with the wonderful Pakistani chai and the tea. So it will be a matter of cauliflower rice and salads. And that's it. You're my people there. So we definitely have to change the way we are addressing the way we eat. Now, I have another question here from Munir. Question, why does diabetes cause bad circulation to the limbs and feet?
So diabetes actually affect the nerves as well. So it's not as much the circulation, but the actual nerves that are damaged in the feet and in the hands, and also in the eyes as well. And that damage is actually on the nerves rather than the vascular problems. But microvascular problems will also exaggerate that problem.
Okay.
So it's the nerves that goes, but not you don't actually get hemorrhages in your feet as such. You get what is called gangrenes, and that is sort of a nerve problem. It's deterioration of nerves.
Okay. I hope that has answered your question, Munir. Now, what about the importance of exercise?
So it is really vital that we're physically active. our research suggested that some members of our community were not aware of whether they should exercise or, in fact, what exercises they should do. So, for example, some people in our community suggested that they should rest more because they have diabetes, or that walking will make the diabetes worse. And in fact, some people reported that they couldn't do any exercises as they couldn't go to the gym. Now, the important thing is you don't have to go to the gym. Brisk walking with friends is good compared to no exercises at all. It is advisable that diabetic patients do around 150 minutes light to moderate exercises a week, for example, brisk walking, or 90 minutes of strenuous exercises a week. And that really comes to less than about 30 minutes a day.
Okay. So, 30 minutes, half an hour a day actually isn't too much to ask.
No, and it makes a lot of difference. Now, the other very important point I'd like to stress is to try to cut down on sitting time. So if you sit and cook, it would be much better if you stand up and cook. If you use a computer, try to get a stand-up desk. Walk around the house, don't just sit. And also make sure that you have regular breaks while watching TV, for example.
Yeah. I think that's fair point, actually, with regards to standing up and cooking as well. So I have a message that has come from a Mr. John Kidd, who says that wonderful that the professor has come on board and given a talk. I would like her to come again and give us a talk. So it just sort of came on and I put it sort of went away. So I just caught a glimmer of that message. So that's a wonderful, heartening message. Thank you very much. It's from somebody called Umar. So thank you very much for that message. Now, going on, because I'm looking at the time as well, and we always run out of time on these shows. What about maintaining a healthy lifestyle in short?
So healthy lifestyle is also really important. Reduce smoking, try to reduce your levels of stress, try stress relieving exercises like meditation, yoga, make sure your meetings at work don't impede on your food times, try to get enough sleep. Smoking increases the risk of diabetic retinopathy and also of cataract. So really try to, reduce smoking and try to reduce your levels of stress. Okay. And try to get enough sleep.
Yes, sleep is very important. Something that I don't get enough of, but there you go. That's another story. Now, obviously, there is a strong need to increase the awareness of diabetes and its complications and how to look after it. Are there any diabetic training programs in the UK that our listeners could be aware of?
Yes, so there are various programs that are available to patients in the country, and these are generally recommended by GPs, so you probably recommend them. And as you know, for type 1 diabetes, there's a program called Daphne. For type 2 diabetes, there's a program called Desmond. However, what we found was that not many of our people were actually aware of these programs, and the uptake was quite poor. And unfortunately, not many are actually currently available in any South Asian languages.
Wow.
So for those who cannot read and write, although there are some leaflets available, that's not so good. And in order to address this, what we've done is sort of develop some short awareness programs in Urdu and in Nepali language. And we're taking this into the community. And that's the one we took to the Gladstone Community Centre last week.
Right. That's very, very interesting that you say that. And I sometimes use a resource called patient.co.uk, which has a facility for translating the content into a certain language. So if I press Urdu on it, the whole content sort of transcripts into Urdu immediately, which is good bedtime reading and easy to just print off. So that's one option too. So that's wonderful. So we've got Desmond for type 2 diabetes and Daphne for type 1.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So obviously D for diabetes and D for diabetes. That's very, very interesting. Now, what are the implications for us if we don't act? So some burning questions, obviously.
Yeah, so, I just want to emphasize the fact that, the complications of uncontrolled diabetes can lead to blindness, kidney failure, stroke, heart attacks, leg amputations. And this is largely preventable as long as we control our diabetes.
Yeah.
And that's the take-home message, really.
Yes, I can imagine. And that is a very strong take-home message. Now, summing up, obviously we've had a wonderful chat around this. We've got the last 6 minutes of the show. What are the different barriers we face in looking after our diabetes, and what can we do about it?
Okay, so I'll go through them very quickly. The lack of understanding about medication and management is a barrier. Language and communication problems are a barrier. Sometimes the unwillingness to take control ourselves is a barrier. Understanding our food, like we mentioned, social factors. Should we tell our friends? Lack of gender-specific exercises. All those are barriers that we've come across. And really, to address this, trust your healthcare provider, trust your GP. If you have any concerns about your diabetes, increase your own awareness of diabetes. Try to own the management of your diabetes. Engage friends and family to help you in this journey for healthy living. I'm sure they would prefer you to have a very long and healthy life. If your community organizes specific exercise classes, attend them. Local meditation and yoga classes, try to attend them. If you need to take time off from your doctor's appointments, talk to your managers to say this is what you need to do. Try to see if there's any community champions. Arrange with friends to look after your children if you need to go and see a doctor, and then you can then help them when it is their turn.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's so important, and what you've said is so key. Now, obviously, the diabetic eye screening program is one that is very much education. Education has been emphasized on this aspect. I had some professionals on the show a couple of months ago talking about the diabetic eye screening program and the fact that they were having problems trying to penetrate the Asian community, which is why talks like this are so important. We have to accept where, I don't want to use the word failing, but we have to accept where there are poor health outcomes. Yeah. And we have to accept the fact that we have certain lifestyles. Oop, I just hit my head on the microphone, but I'm okay. I'm still alive. And I think that it's so important that we take ownership of where we are making mistakes. And I say this very bluntly, that we are making mistakes. We're making mistakes with our lifestyles. We're making mistakes with the way we're living. We're not looking at those health preventative activities. And we also have a sister, Ruby Corker, who has just said, I've attended the Desmond program, and it's a great short course. So we have people in the community that are looking at these various education courses, and a lot of people might dismiss it and say, oh well, I've got what they call sugar, the problem of sugar, but they don't actually realize that I have actually within my own professional capacity seen many young deaths as a result of complications due to diabetes, and they've been horrible. Whole families are affected by it. So very, very important as well. Was there anything you wanted to add on the back of that last question, Professor?
So really, my last take-home message would be to, think about this. So I'd like you to close your eyes and imagine that you will never see again. Now, what would you be prepared to do to stop yourself from going blind? Now, tell yourselves that this risk of blindness can be reduced substantially as long as we take care. So what I'd like to say is look after your diabetes. Please make sure you attend your doctor and retinal screening programs. Talk to them about your concerns. If you've missed an appointment, then seek another. Look after your diabetes. Exercise regularly. And think about how much you value your vision. And also, health is such an important gift of life. Please don't give it away.
Oh, what a wonderful, wonderful way to articulate the end. You were so perfect at it, Professor, and I'm going to read out Munir Ahmed's comment about you. Thank you, Professor. You have been so professional and conveyed the key points about diabetes. Shabina is always the life of body, health and mind, but you would say that, being my biggest watcher and follower of the show. So thank you very much. And Professor, thank you so much for your wonderful time here on the show. Peterborough has loved your input and welcomed you, especially Salam Radio and the Body, Health and Mind show.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Privilege to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And that was the very, very eloquent and very articulate Professor Shahina Pardhan, who gave us a wonderful vision, say that with every pun intended, about diabetic retinopathy. And she's the director of Vision and Eye Institute, and she qualified with a first-class honours in optometry from the University of Bradford, and today is giving us the key messages on how to look after your health. So go and attend those eye screening appointments. You can't afford not to. And once again, the show has come to a close. I will be seeing you soon with another Body Health and Mind show and another fantastic guest. Do look after yourself, wrap up warm, and wash your hands. Take home message. Assalamu alaikum.
Stay tuned to Salam Radio.